Lesbian detectives. Unsolved cases. She's still missing. Yeah, they haven't found her yet. Well, let's talk about it.
They say he vanished without a trace. Could it be a psychotic break or a tragic accident? Police don't know where the body went. Unsolved murders, body still missing. That's unheard. Where's the witness? Lesbian detectives, what's going on? City on high alert, this out the norm. He did what, the who? Man, that ain't real, these crimes ain't true. Then come uncover these theories with us. We live right now, tuning in is a must.
Live right now. Lesbian detective. Lesbian detective. We about to start the show, so get your popcorn ready to go. Pay attention to the message I present to you, the Lesbian Detectives.
This is Lesbian Detectives. I'm Sierra.
And I'm Elizabeth.
And we are here talking about missing and unsolved murders.
We are discussing cases that you have forgotten about or never even heard of.
So sit back, relax, and let's start this podcast. Welcome back, guys, to a new episode on a new week. And for some reason, I had this week episode planned, but I need a little bit more time to finish writing because the case is very, very important. So I'm like, no, I already had this case written, so I'm like, let's do this case right here. I hope everybody enjoyed their 4th of July, and you all know I said I was doing a gender reveal for my friend. She's having a boy. I don't think I told my wife the name. It is Brayson Ellis Gray. Only part I like is Gray, and I said, I'm just gonna name him Gray. She like, I figured. But she named the baby after her grandfather. So I'm like, you know what? You got it, girl. You got it. But guys, I've been trying to get into the soccer tournament. And I see the U.S. and Mexico is out.
Yeah. A lot of people think that because I'm Mexican, I'll watch soccer, but I don't.
She doesn't.
I only watch women's basketball because it's women. Sorry. And not sorry.
Well, the women's soccer team is really, really good.
If you show me, I'll start watching it.
I know. I have to learn soccer. Like basketball, I started last year, as you guys know. And this year, I have been like really learning the sport. I've been telling my wife, like, oh, they traveling, they doing this. Because when I watch something, I want to understand it. So I've been doing my little thing. But I am going to see one of Dallas Wing's basketball players, guys, soon. I'm so excited. I get to take a picture with her. So excited. If I want to see my other ones, I just gotta go to their city. So
I'm excited about this rum chata. I had it for 4th of July and I just can't stop drinking it.
it's a different kind though.
I know, but the coconut.
And guys, she doesn't drink. Like my wife, okay, she was a drinker when we first got together, and then when she got older, like hit 30, she was like, I'm done drinking. And I'm like, what the crap? Because I was pregnant, trying to get pregnant, so I couldn't drink and none of that stuff. She stopped drinking, and now this weekend she just started to drink. Not like a lot, guys. She was just like, hey, I want a cup. But she's just not a drinker. Well, that was our weekend. I hope you guys had a fantastic 4th. And I don't know what soccer team I'm going for now. All the important ones that everybody said go for is out. So
is the U.S. out?
Yes, the U.S. out. And Mexico. I think Brazil's still in. I don't think Brazil's still in.
I think Colombia's out.
Colombia. I don't know, guys. I'll let you know who I'm going for next week. Or if they done this week. I don't know. We'll see. Before I start this, guys, I am so thankful for you guys to post us on your social media. But can you guys tag us, or also like don't make your page private, because I have got a lot of tags in social media and I can't see it, guys, because your page is private. So next time you tag us, just make your page look like public so we can see it. Thank you. Now let's say my favorite line. Now let's get into the episode. Deep in the wilderness of Alaska, surrounded by miles of trees in a quiet road where neighbors live far apart, there was a small cabin that seemed like any other. Inside that cabin was a family, a family going through a difficult time, but still trying to move forward. On this night, everything appeared normal. There were laughter, there were conversations, there were plans for the future. Two children spent the evening with their family, enjoying time together before eventually returning home. But within a short hours, everything changed. When the house was checked later that night, something felt wrong. The cabin was quiet, the lights were off, and inside the kitchen a simple meal sat unfinished. A pot of water remained on the stove. Food had been left behind. It looked as though someone had walked away in the middle of making a late night snack. But there was one problem. The children who had started preparing the meal were gone. There were no sign of where they went, no clear explanation, no evidence that could tell investigators what happened inside those walls. Just a series of unanswered questions and how two children disappeared from their own home. Did someone come to the cabin that night? Did they leave on their own? Or is the truth hidden somewhere in the details everyone had been trying to understand for decades? The search that followed will uncover strange clues, family tensions, mystery sightings, and theories that continue to divide those searching for answers. But after all these years, one question remains. What really happened on that quiet September night? This is the story of a disappearance that has remained unsolved for nearly half a century. This is the case of Scott and Amy Fandel. Before we get into the investigation, we need to remember the two children at the center of this mystery. Scott Curtis Fandel was born on January 23, 1965. By the time he disappeared, Scott was 13 years old. Those who knew him described him as smart, adventurous, and mature beyond his years. Like many boys his age, Scott could be playful, and beneath that personality was protective older brother who deeply cared about his little sister. Scott loved being outdoors. He enjoyed motorcycles and even completed a wilderness survival course. People who knew Scott say he was the type of kid who could handle responsibilities, and that responsibility often included looking after Amy. Amy Lee Fandel was born on August 25, 1970. She was only 8 years old when she disappeared. Family members described Amy as sweet, gentle child. She loved dolls, pretty clothes, and spending time with animals. She was remembered as a child who was kind to both people and animals. Scott and Amy were not just siblings. They were close. And on the night they vanished, investigators will later believe that if someone had tried to harm Amy, Scott would have done everything possible to protect her. At the time, Fandel family lived in Alaska. Their home was a small cabin located off Scout Lake Loop Road near the Sterling Highway. The cabin sat deep among the trees, partially hidden from the road, but the area was still isolated. The closest neighbors were Nancy and Bill Lupton and their 5 children. The Lupton family lived about 200 yards away, and their children were some of Scott and Amy's closest friends. The Fandel children often spent time with the Lupton kids. They walked to school together, played together, and were a regular part of each other's lives. Outside of the area seemed peaceful, but inside the Fandel family, life had recently become complicated. Scott and Amy's parents had gone through a difficult divorce. Their mother, Margaret Fandel, had been married to Roger Fandel. Amy bio, the marriage had fallen apart after Roger was accused of being unfaithful, and eventually he moved away to Arizona. The divorce was described by those close to the family as bitter and emotional. Margaret, who worked long hours as a waitress, was left raising the children. During this difficult period, reports state that Margaret struggled emotionally and began drinking more heavily. With Roger living hundreds of miles away, Scott and Amy were often left home alone. but family members and neighbors said Scott handled the responsibility well. Even though he was only 13 years old, he was mature and protective. He was the older brother who looked after Amy. In September 1978, a change was about to happen in their household. Margaret's sister, Kathy, was moving from Illinois to Alaska to help the family. Scott and Amy were excited. They were looking forward to having their aunt living with them. On September 4th, 1978, Kathy arrived in Alaska. That evening, the family went out together. Margaret, Kathy, Scott, and Amy went to a local restaurant and bar called Good Time Charlie. The establishment had arcade games which gave the children something to do while the adults talked. Amy and Scott drank soda and played games while their mother and aunt spent time together. For a few hours, everything seemed normal. The children were happy. The aunt had just arrived. The family was together. No one knew that this would be the last normal evening Scott and Amy would ever have. Around 10 p.m., Margaret and Kathy decided it was time to take the children home. They drove Scott and Amy back to the cabin. Before leaving, Margaret told the children not to stay up too late. Kathy reportedly reminded them to lock the door, but Scott laughed. The cabin door lock was broken. The children were used to it. They lived in a quiet area surrounded by people they knew. They had no reason to believe they were in danger. Margaret and Kathy left to return to town. They planned to look for a friend. They stopped at 2 local bars, Larry Club and the Rainbow Bar, before eventually heading back home. At the time, no one realized that while Margaret and Kathy were away, Scott and Amy were about to disappear. After Margaret and Kathy left, Scott and Amy were alone. It was a normal evening for the siblings. They were familiar with being at home without their mother. Scott was 13, responsible, and used to looking after his younger sister. But instead of staying inside the cabin, Scott and Amy decided to walk over to the Lumpton family home. The Lumpton lived about 200 yards away, and their children were some of Scott and Amy's closest friends. This was something the children did often. The two families were close, and the Fandel children felt comfortable being over there. When Scott and Amy arrived, they joined the Lumpton children and began playing. According to Nancy, that evening seemed completely normal. Scott and Amy were happy. They were excited about their Aunt Kathy moving in and talked about having her there. There was nothing about their behavior that suggested anything was wrong. They were simply two children enjoying the last night anyone would ever see them. After some time, Nancy and Bill decided the children were being too loud. Nancy eventually sent Scott and Amy back to their cabin, and sometime after that moment, the timeline becomes unclear because no one knows exactly what happened. One of the last possible sightings of the Fandel cabin came from a neighbor passing through the area. Around 11:45 p.m., someone noticed the lights were still on inside the cabin. At first, this did not seem unusual. Scott and Amy were reportedly afraid of the dark and often kept the lights on throughout the house. The cabin was small, and the children were familiar with the area, but this would become one of the final clues investigators had, because sometime between the last sighting and the time Margaret and Kathy returned home, something changed. After leaving the bar in town, Margaret and Kathy arrived back at the cabin sometime after 2 o'clock in the morning. When Margaret and Kathy returned to the cabin after 2 a.m., something felt different. The house was dark and quiet. Inside the kitchen, they found a strange scene. An open box of macaroni set on the counter. Nearby was a can opener of tomatoes, and on the stove was a pot of water that appeared to be part of the meal that has never been finished. Scott was known to make macaroni as a late-night snack before bed, leading investigators to believe he may have been interrupted preparing it. But the biggest question remains, what interrupted him? Was it someone at the door, someone he knew, a sudden decision to leave, or something much more dangerous? That answer has never been discovered. There has also been debate over what Margaret and Kathy noticed when they returned? Did they check the cabin and realize the kids were gone? Or did they assume Scott and Amy had spent the night with the neighbors? What is known is that they went to sleep. The next morning, Margaret left for work around 8:30 a.m., believing her children had already gone to school. But while at work, she called the school and received devastating news. Neither Scott nor Amy had attended class. They had not gotten on the school bus, they were not with the neighbors, and no one had seen them. Margaret realized the children were missing.
At approximately 5:14 p.m. on September the 5th, she contacted the Alaska State Troopers. A massive search began. Authorities brought in search dogs from Anchorage. Volunteers searched the surrounding woods, and investigators checked possible travel routes. Ferries were searched, and Canadian authorities were notified in case someone had taken the children out of Alaska. But nothing was found. No clothing, no belongings, no evidence showing where Scott and Amy had gone. When investigators arrived at the cabin, they were faced with a case that seemed almost impossible. 2 children had disappeared from a remote home with no witnesses, no obvious struggle, and very few clues. Investigators began looking at everyone connected to the family, including the children's father, Roger Fandel. Because of the difficult divorce between Roger and Margaret, some questioned whether he could have been involved. Roger denied any involvement, traveled back to Alaska to help search for his children, and investigators later determined he had an alibi for the night they disappeared. Over time, law enforcement moved away from considering him a likely suspect, although suspicion and family disagreements surrounding him continued for years. Another major lead involved a black sedan, reportedly seen near the cabin around the time Scott and Amy vanished. A witness reported seeing the vehicle speeding away from the area. Investigators traced the car to 2 carnival workers who were familiar with the Fandel family and had previously stayed at the cabin. The men were questioned and denied any involvement. They explained they had returned to the area for work-related reasons, and investigators later determined the witness may have mistaken the date of the sighting. The promising lead eventually went nowhere. Authorities also discovered bullet casings outside the cabin, but they could not determine how long they had been there or whether they were connected to the disappearance. Once again, investigators were left without answers. As months turned to years, the case became filled with theories, but little evidence. Some believe someone at Good Time Charlie may have overheard that the children would be home alone and used that information to their advantage. Others wondered if someone familiar with the family had come to the cabin that night. Because Scott was so protective of Amy, investigators considered whether he may have willingly gone with someone if he believed it would keep his sister safe. But every theory faced the same problem. There was no proof. The disappearance also created tension within the Fandel family. One of the strangest parts of the investigation was the growing tension within the Fandel family. Roger Fandel eventually began suspecting his uncle, Herman, believing he may have known more about what happened to Scott and Amy. However, publicly available information does not show that Roger had any confirmed evidence connecting Herman to the disappearance. Herman denied any involvement and, in return, questioned whether Roger himself could have been responsible. The accusation between family members led investigators to look into Herman more closely. Authorities even searched his property and dug up his yard looking for evidence, but nothing was found. In the end, the investigation did not uncover anything that connected Herman, Roger, or any other family member to the disappearance. The accusation became another unanswered chapter in the case already filled with uncertainty. For Margaret, the years after Scott and Amy disappeared were filled with grief, public suspicion, and endless questions. She faced criticism for some members of the community and received calls from people claiming they had psychic information about her children. None of these claims led to answers. In 1980, Margaret left Alaska and moved back to the Midwest. She eventually rebuilt her life and remarried, but she never stopped hoping that Scott and Amy were alive. In a 1988 interview, she said she believed her children might one day return home. Decades after Scott and Amy Fandel disappeared, the case gained new attention from people searching for answers online. One of the most notable voices was a man identifying himself as Terry, who stated he was the children's uncle. Terry became involved in online discussions about the case, including a long-running thread on Web Sleuth that began in 2004. Unlike many people who simply followed the case, Terry claimed to have a personal connection to the children and shared his own theories about what may have happened. One of his biggest beliefs was that Scott and Amy's disappearance may have been connected to a drug transaction. Terry suggested that there may have been people involved in activities that the family was unaware of, and that the children could have become connected in something dangerous. However, his theory never had been proven, and investigators have never publicly confirmed evidence linking the disappearance to a drug-related incident. Terry also claimed that he faced intimidation while trying to look into what happened to his niece and nephew. He suggested that some people did not want him asking questions or continuing to search for answers. Again, these claims have not been verified by law enforcement. One of Terry's most talked about theories involves Amy. Terry believed that there was a possibility that Amy had survived and was living somewhere under a different identity. Over the years, online investigators noticed a woman with the same name as Amy Fandel who appeared to have connections involving Roger Fandel on social media. Some people began wondering if this could be the missing girl. The woman denied being the same Amy Fandel who disappeared from Alaska in 1978. The attention surrounding the theory eventually became overwhelming, and she reportedly deleted her social media accounts after receiving harassment from people who believed she was connected to the case. Authorities have never confirmed that this woman was the missing Amy. Terry's involvement shows how the Scott and Amy Fandel case has continued to capture attention decades later. For some people, his theories raise new questions. For others, they added more uncertainty to an already complicated mystery. But despite all discussions, theories, and renewed interest, the same problem remains. There is still no confirmed evidence showing what happened to Scott and Amy Fandel. Their disappearance remains unsolved. Nearly 5 decades later, the mystery remains. Scott and Amy Fandel is disappearing from their Alaska cabin, leaving behind only questions, a meal left unfinished, a quiet home, and a family still waiting for answers. 2 children vanished that night, and no one knows where they went. Before we end this case, let's remember the victims. They are not just names in an investigation file. They are children who had favorite foods, favorite games, and people who loved them. Scott was the older brother who looked out for his little sister. Amy was a young girl who loved animals, dolls, and pretty things. If Scott and Amy were alive today, they would be adults with lives, memories, and stories of their own. Scott would be in his 60s, Amy would be in her 50s. Someone who has information, someone who has carried a secret for nearly half a century, and maybe one day that person will come forward, because even after all this time, the search for Scott and Amy Fandel is not over. Their story is still waiting for an ending, because the more people who remember their names, the harder it becomes for them to be forgotten. Scott Fandel, Amy Fandel, 2 siblings who disappeared, but never disappeared from the hearts of those who still hope for answers. This is the case of Scott Fandel and Amy Fandel. Now let's get into some theories.
Theories.
Let's get into some theories. Let's get into some theories. Everyone is a suspect until proven guilty. Let's get into some theories. Lesbian detectives. What type of thoughts you thinking? What theories running through your mind? I'm thinking all types of suspicion. Uncover the truth, what we can find. Witness say they saw somebody creeping out the back door. What you think they did it for? That's so crazy, I'm not sure. They found a car, where could she be? Here go another puzzle piece. Researching through your history. It's plenty unsolved mysteries. Everyone is a suspect until proven guilty. Let's get into some theories, yeah. Let's get into some theories. Let's get into some theories. Everyone is a suspect until proven guilty. Let's get into some theories. Lesbian detectives.
You or me?
Go ahead.
So this case, I have to think like Scott. Scott is very protective of his sister. So you have to go through Scott to get to Amy. Like, To me, it had to be someone Scott trusted. Like, not Amy, because Amy's like 8. The person Scott has to know and trust, like, oh, I know this person, I trust this person. For him to be making a meal and stop and, like, oh, like, go with this person, turn off the lights and leave. Like, it seemed like he was cooking and he turned off the lights. That mean to me like he was like shutting the house down. You know, when you leave your house, you turn off your light, you lock your door, you turn your alarm, like you closing your house down to leave. To me, it was just kind of weird that the dad said, "Oh, it's my uncle Herman." Cause I'm like, why is it? Why is it uncle? Like, what's the reason? He never came out and said the reason. To me, let me tell you something. And I know a lot of people who do this. They have that weird uncle or that weird auntie that touch kids, and everybody know, like, hey, don't have your kid around them. And if a kid is around them, they make sure they have like long pants. Like, make sure they don't look too, I don't want to say the word. I really don't want to say this word, but I'm going to say it, guys. I don't mean nothing but sexual towards them. You know, like shorts, a little shirt. And I feel like probably Uncle Herman was that person. And to me, I don't understand parents' logic. If you know this, why this person still around the kids? Why you have your kids around this person? And why is the family still having this person around? I don't get that. Like, they don't want that person to leave, but they trying to protect the kids. You're not protecting the kids. You're making them even more, you know, a target. But I'm thinking about Scott. If Scott got a weird feeling about Uncle Herman, he probably wouldn't like have Amy around him. You know what I'm saying? Then I think about Terry. Terry, it's just weird because I read online. If somebody knows this for sure, please, because I could not find it. If Terry was really a uncle of the kids, because why are you telling everybody you their uncle and you putting all this information out there about the case? You know, it's kind of weird for you to do that. Like, oh, it was a drug thing. How was it a drug thing? Like, to me, the mom was out there like drinking and stuff like that. That would probably win for her. You know, she's out in the open, and the dad is in Arizona, so go get him in Arizona. So I don't understand if it was a drug thing, but for him to say, "Oh, Amy's still alive," to me, I feel like Amy was the target. When 2 people or 3 people get unalive, you always say, "Who was the real target?" To me, I feel like it was Amy, but they had to go through Scott. They had to gain Scott trust as a predator. They know how to groom a kid. They know what kid to groom and how to groom them. So they're like, oh, I really like this little girl, but I gotta get to that brother. I gotta groom that brother. I want this, you know. So that's my thought process. What do you think?
I don't know. This is all too fishy. So to me, it's just really odd because it took a long, long, long time, a very long time, for the mom to check on them. Mm-hmm. She went out with the aunt. Mm-hmm. The kids supposedly went somewhere else, which is confirmed too. Mm-hmm. But who's to say that the kids came back home?
Right.
I know that there was cooking going on, but a lot of the times when you're kids, or even as adults, you'll cook, you'll eat, but if you're trying to go somewhere, like, you'll just probably leave it out and then you'll come back and put it up or whatever. To me, I have a really bad feeling about the mom, because why all of a sudden are you calling the school because you have to tell your daughter something very important? If it was very important, you could have done it whenever you came home and checked on your kids, or in the morning, checked on the kids. But to me, I'm going to check. If I'm going out, I'm going to check that same night. And then all of a sudden, you have this really important thing that you have to tell your daughter about. And then whenever Terry was saying that Amy was alive or something, it's like it all comes back to Amy. Why is the mom checking on Amy or telling the school something super important to Amy? And then Terry's talking about Amy, about her being alive. So I don't know what the mom was going through, what her financial situation was. But it just, to me, it's like, I hate to say it, but it's like child neglect. And who's to say that you probably didn't try and sell one of your kids? Because I mean, as a parent, first thing that I'm going to do is check my kid.
Right.
If I go out and whenever I come back, what do? I make sure that my wife's in bed and my baby's, okay, like if she's sleeping or whatever. And then I can go to sleep. But to me, just the fact that she didn't check on her kids and they just have all of this freedom, it's like neglect.
Right.
And to me, if you're neglecting your kids, and I mean, I hate to say it, but if you're neglecting your kids, to me, it's because you probably don't really care. So I'm going to say that I think the mom had some type of unusual involvement with
Right. 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 And one thing always stand out to me that she did leave Alaska, because a lot of cases that you see with a kid going missing or unalive or anything like that, that family, or if they're unalive, they do move away. But if they're missing, that mom, there, she's not leaving that household because in her head, she's like, my kid. We did a case about Anthony and his mom always. It's been like, I forgot, 50 years. She stayed in that same apartment complex. She left a light on. She leave a light on every freaking night for her son to come home. Cause she like, he might come back. I have to stay here until he comes home. And a lot of parents, they do that. They do not leave. If they move out that house, it's going to be somewhere close. There, she moved out of the state. Then she got remarried and then she has kids. And I'm not saying like, hey, she had to be like single for the rest of her life. But to me, if something happened, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. Something happened to my daughter, I'm not leaving the state. Also, I'm not like getting remarried. I probably can find somebody. Don't know, never know. But have another kid that might, like, I don't know. It's like she grew up and became the parent, because I don't know what kind of parent she is now, but kind of seemed like she probably became a better parent to these kids. But she grew up and became a better parent to the kids that she has now. Amy and Scott wanted that mom. They said, everybody said she was emotional. She started drinking a lot. That's why she was at the bar. Like, she wasn't home. Scott, who's 13 years old, he had to step up and be like a parent for his sister, which is freaking sad because Scott didn't have he didn't have a childhood. We don't know what age was it really that he stood up. So probably like say 10 or 11. Like, he had to be the man of the household, really.
Yeah.
He had to cook, take care of his sister, do all that stuff. Even probably take care of his mom because she's drinking. So, she's probably throwing up everywhere. It's because for her not to check on her kids. And then she like, oh, when I got up, I assumed that was at school. So you telling me you didn't make sure your kids, you didn't hear them moving around in the morning time. You didn't see no dishes in the sink for them eating breakfast. You didn't see like, okay, it's Alaska. You didn't see footsteps in the snow, like you didn't notice nothing. I know it's the smallest things about my toddler, and she's 3 and she's busy.
And I know too, the front door, it wasn't locking or something, right?
Yeah,
so it's like, it's just pure neglect. And I feel like the phone call that she made to the school, it was just kind of like a validation, like, okay, yeah, they're not coming back. The deal is done. And honestly, like whenever you have any type of addiction or just problems in general, like some people find the easy way out. And I hope to be wrong, but child neglect is abuse. It is. You have these, and then the fact that the dad went to Alaska to go look for his kids tells you something else. Because a parent that cares about his kids, they're going to try and do what they can to find them. And the other one didn't really do much. Like, she left, she remarried, like you said. So it's just very, very odd to me.
I want to ask the dad. I don't know if I want to ask him if I get the chance. Why did he think it was the uncle? That still like stuck to me. Like, why you think it was uncle? Because I hate we don't know how the house was, because even the mom said, all this stuff was left behind. But she said, like, we don't really know. Like, we hearing what she says, and she was drunk that night. You drunk at 2 o'clock in the morning, you notice all that stuff, but you didn't check on your kids. That is weird, because I'm thinking about Scott. He's 13-year-old boy. He's going to fight. Somebody come in their house and try to take his sister. He's going to fight. It's going to be some damage. It's going to be something like left behind. So like you said, like the house was clean, like it was just a little stuff right there. That's weird to me. That's why I was.
Unless it didn't happen in the house. What if it was on their way back? So she probably knows that her kids always go to another house, right? And they usually come back. What if they got taken on their way back? What if they didn't even make it back to the house?
One thing I want to know is about the neighbors. They know some stuff about that household. Because if them kids always coming over and that mom is not home, trust me, as like our daughter have friends and we're cool with the moms, right? And the dads. Like we know them, but we also know their family home situation. You know what's going on. You the neighbor. So you see things, you hear things. And Scott probably more closed off, but Amy's probably not. She's going to let some things slide out because she's a kid. So I wonder if the neighbors have things to say, even their kids, because, kids, they communicate with each other. They talk their problems to. So I wonder if their neighbors can come out and say like, hey, we noticed these things. The mom was like this. The kid said this. I wonder what happened. I wish they came out and said more things about what they experienced being Margaret neighbors. Well, guys, that is our case. I want to hear your theories. Let me know what you think happened to Scott and Amy. Put it in the comments and I will talk to you in the comments because I need to know, who do you think hurt these two beautiful kids? We are on all podcast platforms, so come check us out on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you're on podcast platform, give us a 5-star rating and tell us why you like our podcast so much. Thank you for listening. This is Lesbian Detectives, and do not forget, everybody's a suspect
Till proven innocent.
Bye.
Lesbian detectives. Unsolved cases. She's still missing. Yeah, they haven't found her yet. Well, let's talk about it.
They say he vanished without a trace. Could it be a psychotic break or a tragic accident? Police don't know where the body went. Unsolved murders, body still missing. That's unheard. Where's the witness? Lesbian detectives, what's going on? City on high alert, this out the norm. He did what, the who? Man, that ain't real, these crimes ain't true. Then come uncover these theories with us. We live right now, tuning in is a must.
Right now. Lesbian detectives. Lesbian detectives. We about to start the show, so get your popcorn ready to go. Pay attention to the message I present to you, the Lesbian Detectives.